Welcome to another episode of AnimeCons TV. My name is Doug Wilder, and once again we're talking about panels. This time I'm going to talk a little bit about how to organize a group of people and some of the tips for when you're organizing multiple people on a panel that you've applied to do at a convention. Of course, the reason we call panels at conventions is it started as a panel discussion, like you assembled a panel of experts and things like that. And over time, they've kind of morphed into more people do kind of lecture presentations and things like that. But the origin is a group of people, assembling a panel. So it's not uncommon to do it, and it's also a good practice to have. I mean, I've enjoyed doing panels of my own solo, but I have also noticed personally, I always feel like I'm at my best when I have other people to kind of play off of and things like that. Just because you get more than one perspective and you remember different things and things like that. So we're going to break it up into a couple different parts here. First off, let's go with what to do when you're applying for a panel with multiple people. As always, when applying for a panel, keep deadlines in mind. And so if the convention says, all panel applications need to be submitted by the 15th of this month, give people a deadline of saying, hey, I need your information by the 10th. So you have a couple of days to assemble things, get the application ready. Plus that in case something happens, people have a little extra time. But also make sure when you're looking at the panel application, you know things like, I'm going to need this person's name, their email, their phone number, or just their name, or just some panel applications are just put in the number of co-panels that you're going to have. It varies convention to convention, and this is again why you should always be reading the panel application in full in advance, not waiting till the last minute. When you're inviting people, a couple things to keep in mind are, don't do it just to kind of get you and your friends free badges. That's never a good practice for going to a convention. You want to actually make sure you're getting people that know what they're talking about, can contribute to the conversation, and do worthwhile. Because conventions do pay attention to stuff like, this group of people only did it to get their friends on board, things like that. And it's just not a good practice. You can also, though, reach out to people. If there's someone you know that, maybe a friend of a friend or something that's a really good expert on the topic you're talking about, don't be afraid to invite them, because sometimes you get some great co-panelists out of that. I've made some good friendships from people that I just said, hey, I kind of know you and you've clearly researched a lot of this stuff. Would you be interested in joining my panel? And sometimes people say sure. But by the same token, if you do invite people and they decline, don't worry about it too much. Just kind of take it in stride. Say, okay, thank you. Maybe next time. Don't take it too personally. People can have a variety of reasons for declining offers, and it's just the way it is. Now then, you've put in your panel application. You've gotten word that it's been approved. Let's move on to planning. Once again, keep deadlines in mind and set deadlines for the people you're working with. This is really important if you're doing something like preparing a slide deck. I run the mecha panel at Anime Boston every year, giant robots, things like that. And we always have different clips and stuff like that and pictures and stuff. And I usually tell my co-panelists, I say, I need everything sent to me 2 weeks in advance before the convention. That just gives me time to put everything together, make sure the slide deck works and everything, and if there's any kinks to iron out, I have time to do that. So just kind of keep deadlines in mind, remind people that, hey, I need X, Y, and Z by this date, and just don't be afraid to nudge them. Also, while you're kind of doing it, give people a general outline of what you're doing. Okay, we're going to, talk about here, we're going to talk about this point, then we're going to talk about this point and this point, then we'll do Q&A, and that'll be the end of the panel. And we'll work on it like that. A good tool for doing stuff like that is Google Docs. That way you can kind of build it and people can look at it as you're assembling it. And if they have feedback or questions, they can review it there. Another thing that's really good is just kind of a Facebook group. So you can just, or just a Facebook chat with everyone if you can do that. Just to kind of get everyone on the same page, talk out ideas, things like that. If you want a more, vocal conversation, but can't all get together and meet in person, Skype is a great way to just kind of find an evening or something that everyone can just get online and all talk out, and you can just kind of review the details there. And again, you can share your screen, and if kind of like Google Docs, people can see what you're working on. One of the things also is once the con schedule has been made and the con schedule has been released, plan a time and a place and time to meet that's a little bit before your panel to just kind of do a last minute review, maybe 10 to 20 minutes, just go through things really quick. I don't think you need to rehearse so much as just kind of give everyone a fresh thing. It's like, this is really good if, say, a panel is on Saturday of a convention, meet Friday. If it's Friday, meet Thursday, things like that. And just a real quick review. This is also a good chance to say, okay, our panel is in this room at this time. We're going to all meet at this area. I'd say, anywhere 15 to half an hour beforehand to get ready. And we're going to get to that part in a second, which is at the con. So you have your meeting, you've reviewed the slide, the materials, you have everyone kind of ready to go. And another reason to kind of meet in person and together before the panel is you can all go to the panel room together. If you want to make the staffer in a panel room so happy, having all the panelists arrive together will make their life so much easier, because now they're not wondering when everyone's going to be there and anything like that. If all the panelists are coming together at the same time, it just adds a lot of ease to their job. I mean, things can come up. I've had friends who have literally, they have another event they can't miss. They've got their own panel that's finishing before ours is starting, things like that. Things happen, but if you can get everyone together at the same time, it is a great thing to do. And now you're running your panel. So we're going to talk about watching your panelists. If you're the panel organizer, your role really is to be more the moderator. You don't want to dominate it. You really want to kind of facilitate good conversation, things like that. So first off, you might have to rein people in, especially if they're going off topic or taking too long. And there's some, polite verbal cues you can use. You can say things like, okay, I need you to finish this up so we can move on to the next slide. Or, hey guys, sorry, I know this is fun. This is really interesting, but we got to keep it more on the topic. Why don't we get into that later on? And another thing you can do to just kind of keep an eye on things is give every person on the panel a chance to speak. This is really important when you have someone that likes to talk a lot, or maybe someone that knows a lot but can be a little shy. A good way to do something like this is if you have each person kind of a section that they're going to talk about, do it like, okay, Jim is doing this section on this top part of the topic, things like that. Or if you're just asking more general questions, again, this is the panel discussion part, you have your set of questions, maybe just make a note of who started each one, and then say, okay, I've asked this question, Bill, why don't you start us off this time? And that way, you've given everyone a chance to have the spotlight a little bit and talk a little bit more like that. And something that can happen, especially if you're working with co-panelists who you haven't worked before, unfortunately, even the best of us have panelists that have bad behavior. The thing about that is you got to keep, as a moderator, you need to keep things moving, but it does depend on the offense. If it's something that's just a minor annoying habit, just kind of pass on it and address it later. If it's something really inappropriate, such as being very offensive or hostile to the other panelists or even the audience, directly tell the offender to stop. Call it out. And I know it can be hard to judge, even as a veteran panelist, This is something I still have trouble with sometimes when working with people that I've never paneled with before. But this is also sometimes why you get people that you know versus just anybody. But it's just something to think about too. And again, don't be afraid to call it out, and it will actually win the audience over to your side because you're showing that you're not going to put up with the inappropriate behavior. There are lines that might be crossed, so just be aware of it. Also, at the end of your panel, once you're finishing up, you're winding down, take the time to publicly thank your panelists to the audience. Be like, I want to thank Tom, Sally, and Brenda for joining me today. Just a little something like that to show your gratitude, because you obviously couldn't have done this panel without them, and it's just a nice little gesture to not just thank them, personally, but a little more publicly too. It's just a nice gesture. Takes, maybe a minute to say it, but it is a worthwhile thing to do. And then finally, after the panel's done, maybe a day or two after the convention is over or afterwards, thank all your participants again. A little more privately, a little more sincerely, just thank them for coming, things like that, because they're putting in their time too. If you're going to run the panel again, say it's a panel that you want to bring to a couple different conventions over a season, or it's one you want to bring back to this very same convention next year, tell people, hey, let's talk about ways we want to make this better. Let's start brainstorming, things like that. Just look at it that way. If there are people that you don't want to panel with after doing a panel with them, especially if there's issues like they didn't really contribute, they didn't meet deadlines when you were planning things, or they had bad behavior during the panel, it's okay to not ask them back. Another thing too, and this is one a lot of people I know have dealt with, is there's sometimes you just don't mesh with people. Like you can be the best of friends outside the panel. You guys like all the same stuff, but your kind of personality as a panelist, you're two very different people, and just the way you guys are on panels just doesn't click together. It's okay to say, hey, we didn't work together as panelists, but we're still friends. There's no harm in that. I've done it. I've had people say it to me. It's nothing hostile. It's nothing that's going to be mean, and it's to make sure you guys both get the opportunity to be the best panelists you can be. So, sometimes, like I said, sometimes people just don't mix, and that is totally okay. So that's a bit on paneling for a group. If you guys have any questions about how to run better panels or any other feedback for us, don't forget to send us an email at podcast@animecons.tv. I'm Doug Wilder, and we'll see you again soon.